COVID-19 has significantly altered the way of life for everyone in every single country in the world. And adoption, unfortunately, has also been severely impacted by COVID. So in this video, what I'm going to do is bring you guys the latest report and statistics regarding adoptions that were done in the year 2019 and 2020. Okay, so let's jump right in here. So we're going to be looking today at a report that was done by the National Council for Adoption, which, if you guys don't know what that is, it's a nonprofit organization and they give a lot of just adoption information. They just came out with this report just a few weeks ago, and in the report they talk about domestic adoption statistics, including public, private, and step-parent adoptions. They give kind of a quick analysis about how COVID-19 impacted adoption and also, give a few more information. So we're gonna go over the findings that they have and then we'll talk about it. And so what they found is that 115,353 children were adopted in the US in 2019. Now, public adoptions, they made up about 57% of all of the adoptions that were done in the US in 2019, and the remaining 43% were private adoptions, okay? So if you look at the chart right here next to, right here where I'm highlighting, you can see in 2019, it shows in the big blue right here, there were 115,000 or more adoptions in the United States. And as you can see here, the total number of domestic adoptions has decreased significantly in 2020. Now, again, we're talking about all adoptions that were done in the United States. In 2020, it decreased to 95,306, which is about a 17% decrease from 2019. Now, what I love to see about this map right here is of all the adoptions that were done in the US in 2019, 56.9% were foster care adoptions or public adoptions, which is phenomenal. And 43.1% were private adoptions, which includes step-parent adoptions as well. And so as you can see here, a lot of kids are being adopted out of foster care, which is so encouraging that despite the grim statistics about foster care, families are still doing their part and stepping up, and kids are being adopted out of foster care. Now, however, a decrease in the number of adoptions was observed in all of the states and the District of Columbia, except for one state. Okay, so we talked earlier how, we've seen the decrease in 2019 and 2020 about adoptions in general, but there is one state, South Dakota, that actually saw an increase of domestic adoptions by 4% from 2019 to 2020. And my question is, what is South Dakota doing that we don't know about? That's incredible. They're the only states in all of the US who saw an increase in domestic adoptions in 2020 from 2019. That's amazing. All right, so now let's talk specifically about private domestic adoptions, okay? So right here you can see private domestic adoptions are any child that was adopted, they were not in foster care, okay? So that includes newborn adoptions and step-parent adoptions as well. Okay, so 49,771 children were adopted privately, and close to half of those were actually step-parent adoptions, okay? Which I would attest to that in my law office. I would say out of 100 adoptions that I do in 1 year, I probably do about 70% step-parent adoptions and 30% newborn adoptions, okay? And I would say that's probably something that a lot of adoption attorneys see all across the board. In 2020, the number of private adoptions was estimated to be 39,000, which was a 20% decrease from 2019. So we saw a decrease in private adoptions from 2019 to 2020 as well. You can see that right here in the chart, and you can see the percentage, how many were step-parent adoptions in the green, how many were, newborn adoptions, basically non-step-parent adoptions, and you can see the decrease here in 2020. Now let's look at public domestic adoption, which is the same thing as foster care adoption. So what happened here is that nationally, the number of public adoptions or foster care adoption decreased by 13% from 2019 to 2020. And so you can see kind of the trend that they have in public adoptions here on this graph from 2011 to 2020. In 2019, we've been seeing a steady increase from 2014 to 2019, and then it dropped significantly in 2020. Now let's talk about international adoptions. For those of you who are interested in adopting out of the country, here are their findings on intercountry adoptions in 2019 and 2020. So there were 2,969 intercountry adoptions in 2019, which was actually a 27% decrease from 2018. And the number of intercountry adoptions, like you see highlighted right here, continued to decrease in 2020. So there were only 1,622 intercountry adoptions, which is a 45% decrease from 2019. So intercountry adoptions have decreased more than any other type of adoptions in the United States. Okay, so you guys can see on this graph right here, in 2014, there were over 6,000 intercountry adoptions, and you see kind of the slow decline over the years. And 2020 is by far the lowest that we've ever seen in intercountry adoptions. And you can probably understand why that would be, right? Because intercountry adoptions is obviously adopting from another country. Now, one of the countries that most people adopted from was China. South Korea is another really popular place that people adopt from. The Ukraine used to be one of the favorite countries to adopt from as well, but with the war that's ongoing right now, you can see why that would be, that there's be such a sharp decrease in intercountry adoptions. Okay, now they kind of give a quick analysis here on what they think the impact of COVID may have had on adoptions. And I think I agree with their findings. So let's see what they have to say. So they say the COVID-19 pandemic upended nearly every aspect of life in the United States, as we all know, and child welfare is not an exception to that. Now, this report right here is actually the first to document a national decline in private domestic adoptions as well. We've seen a decline in foster care adoptions and intercountry adoptions for years, but this is the first time that we've actually seen a national decline in private domestic adoptions. Now, adoptions declined dramatically between 2019 and 2020, as you can see on the table below right here. What I did really like that they said here is that comparing the impact of COVID-19 on different types of adoptions is problematic, okay? Because for example, here, I know from speaking to different adoption attorneys, in 2020, a lot of the court systems were shut down. Okay, so there were adoptions that were pending, were shut down for a while until the court reopened. And so even though it shows that there's a decline in private domestic adoption specifically, that does not necessarily mean that when the courts reopened later in 2020 or 2021, when things were kind of opening up again, that these adoptions did not end up getting finished after this fiscal year that they were looking at for all the different types of adoptions. So that's exactly what they say here. They say comparing the impact of COVID-19 on different types of adoptions is problematic. For example, it is possible that the decline in fiscal year 2020 reflects delayed adoptions that ultimately happened after this reporting period, which I would have to agree with. Now, here in Nebraska, adoptions are a top priority. And so actually through 2020, even during the lockdowns, I was actually doing my adoptions still, because adoptions was one of the only cases that the courthouse did not close their doors to because of the need to complete these adoptions and give permanency to the children. So in 2020, I continued doing adoptions. And so that's why I've heard a lot from different adoption professionals, agencies, and consultants saying that they've seen a sharp decrease in adoptions. But as an adoption lawyer, I didn't see a difference with my law office in 2020. Now, obviously, there are other factors that play into that. But when you take all of the information now that we have from 2019 and 2020, you can see that obviously there's been a sharp decline in private domestic adoptions. But I would argue that we probably want to wait until we see the results from 2020, 2021, and 2022 to see if we actually see an increase of adoptions, just because there was so many lockdowns happening in 2020 that so many cases were delayed in getting finalized. Okay, I know in some states that adoptions were delayed. Intercountry adoptions specifically in Ukraine right now have been on hold because of the war. And so yes, we see a decline, but there's so many other factors that played into that. So it doesn't necessarily mean that there are just no birth moms available for adoptions for newborn, or that step parents are not adopting anymore. It just means that there are so many things happening in 2020 that we can't only say COVID-19 is the sole reason why we saw such a sharp decline in private domestic adoptions. Okay, that's what we have right here for the statistics. And the other thing that they brought up, which is really problematic to try to compare the impact of COVID-19, which I like that they added here, was comparisons between types of adoption may also be challenging due to differences in reporting periods. Okay, so right here, you can see that it says that right here, because both intercountry adoption and adoption from public child welfare system are reported in the federal fiscal year, while many states report data based upon either their state fiscal year or calendar year. Therefore, comparison between types of adoption, maybe comparing timeframes that were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic for a longer period, okay? So there are a few things that could be problematic when we're comparing all these things again and trying to figure out what the true impact of COVID-19 has been on private domestic adoptions specifically, okay? So I hope that this kind of gives you guys a good overview of what we've seen as far as adoption statistics in 2019 and 2020. Now, one of the things that they recommend here, which I think is phenomenal, is to talk about right here that inaccurate information about adoption may be a significant reason why expectant and birth parents do not consider adoption among their options. Isn't that amazing? And that's one of the things that you guys have heard me talk about so much, is that there's so much inaccurate information out there. And that's why I started my adoption program, the Adoption Success Accelerator, that helps families actually understand the step-by-step adoption process that significantly reduces the unnecessary waste of thousands of dollars and years in the process, okay? So having accurate information about adoption, I find, actually sets my clients up for success 100% of the time. The adoptive families that I have met that have ended up spending $50,000 to $60,000 on their adoptions are those who did not understand all of the options that were available to them. They did not really pick the type of adoption that were best for their family at the get-go, or they just picked a professional that their friend recommended or social media recommended, and a year later, as they're still waiting to match, they're now looking at different options, okay? So when you join my program, the Adoption Success Accelerator, I actually teach you how to go through the adoption process and avoid all of that stuff so that you can position yourself to actually adopt successfully without wasting thousands of dollars or wasting years in the process. Now, if you're interested to learn more about my adoption program, I'm gonna put the link in the description below. Click on that link, go learn more about it, and join my Facebook group and come and ask me questions, okay? Okay, well, that's it for today, guys. I hope that information was really helpful. So you can click this video right here to learn more about my Adoption Success Accelerator program and how it can help you significantly increases your chances at adopting successfully. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and also hit that bell button to be notified when I post a new video every week. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye-bye.